Am I the a-hole for telling my dad his grief doesn't get to dictate the name my wife and I chose for our child? My dad, 56M, and I, 28M, have always had a strained relationship. My mom passed away when I was 6, and my dad remarried quickly after. Over the years, I always felt like he wanted me to forget about my mom entirely and embrace his new family as if they were my only one. My mom's memory was never openly acknowledged, and any attempt I made to talk about her was met with indifference. The most direct conversation about it happened when I was 14. My dad sat me down and asked me to let his wife adopt me. He said she had raised me longer than my mom ever had, and that it was time to accept her as my real mom. I told him no, and he reacted like a child, stomping his foot and storming out of the room. He never brought it up again, but the tension between us only grew. 3 years ago, my stepmom passed away. While I was sympathetic to my dad and my half-siblings' grief, it became clear my dad thought her death should halt everything in my life too. I was engaged at the time, and 6 months after her passing, he asked how I could possibly move forward with wedding plans. He expected me to postpone it indefinitely, but I told him I wasn't putting my life on hold. Now my wife and I are expecting our first child, a baby girl. My wife loves nature-inspired names, and since my mom had a nature name, we decided to name our daughter after her. We haven't announced the name yet, but during a recent family dinner, one of my half-siblings asked if we'd picked a name. I said we had an idea but weren't sharing it until the baby was born. That's when my dad jumped in, confidently saying that we'd obviously name the baby after my late stepmom. He acted like it was a done deal, which caught me off guard. I told him he was wrong and that we weren't sharing the name yet. He lost his temper, accusing me of being disrespectful and saying I should honor our family by naming the baby after his late wife. He said his grief, and that of my siblings, deserved to be acknowledged in this way. I calmly told him that our child's name was not his decision and that he was overstepping. Later, he pulled me aside for a private conversation. He accused me of hiding the name because I was naming the baby after my mom and called me inconsiderate for not prioritizing his late wife, who had done everything for me. He said I was a bad son for not honoring her. That's when I told him point blank that his grief doesn't get to dictate the name my wife and I choose for our child. I also reminded him that my grief for my mom didn't seem to matter when I was a child, so I wasn't going to put his grief above my family's choices now. He's since been telling other family members that I've invalidated his grief and that I'm being selfish. AITA?